virtual meeting.
All right, and just for the recording, which I just started, the 5-pack regular meeting for Wednesday, March 17th is starting at 7:04. Rules of conduct for the virtual meeting. This is a web-based call. We are operating under the following procedures. This session will be both video and audio recorded. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally be keeping video of themselves on throughout the meeting. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disturbance, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or the chair. For public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours before the meeting starts. For public input during the meeting, your comments can be submitted through the chat feature in Zoom or by waving your hand and requesting that your mic be unmuted. Please include in both methods your name and address for the record.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So this is the official call to order. Should we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay.
Sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Is there any on yet? Or should I keep going?
Keep going.
Okay, so let's do the audience of citizens. Do we have anybody in the chat rooms that want to participate?
Let me just look at chat. Hold on.
Okay.
Chat room is empty. I don't see any hands waving.
Okay. Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. Good. So we can move on to approval of the minutes. They were sent out by Jennifer to all of us. We need to approve the minutes of the February 17th meeting. Does anybody have questions or comments? Okay.
I'll make
Does
them.
anyone have any changes? Okay. Does anyone object to the minutes being adopted as proposed? Hearing none, we'll accept the minutes.
I move
Okay.
that we approve the minutes for
Oh, I'm sorry.
the 17th.
Okay. Any objection to the minutes? Oh, we need a second, sorry.
Second.
Jeff? Second? Sorry, any objection to the minutes as proposed?
No.
Okay, hearing none, the minutes are accepted. Okay, next is correspondence. There are several minutes from other meetings, the Board of Selectmen meetings, the fiscal policy meeting, and the Board of Education minutes. Does anybody have questions or comments or concerns about any of the correspondence? None? Okay. So moving on to old business. I don't think we have any old business. Am I missing anything, Mark or Bev, that was old business that we need to cover?
No.
I don't think so. No.
All right, so new business we want to start tonight, or the primary purpose of tonight is to look at the budget proposals. I think that's next up, correct? To look at the budget documents, the Board of Education's proposal and the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
Am I correct in understanding the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So who should go first, Mark? Do you have a preference, whether Board of Ed or Board of Selectmen?
I do not have a preference.
Okay, Maria, do you want to go first? Great, thank you.
Sure, happy to. So I'm going to try to share my screen and see how this goes.
And while you're working on that, Maria, if
Mhm.
Ernie can hear us, I could give you a dial-in number if you want to call in and listen with your phone.
Okay, are you ready for me to begin? Kelly, you
go
all
ahead.
set? Okay,
Yep, go
great.
ahead, please, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and I'm really pleased to be here to present the Board of Education's proposed budget for the 2021-2022 school year. First of all, I'd like to thank, of course, our Board of Education members who, have an amazing amount of time that they put into the learning of our students, and they have a clear commitment to the children in Columbia. So I want to thank them for their ongoing support and work on behalf of our children. I also would like to acknowledge our administrative team. We worked very collaboratively together to create a budget that is tightly connected to the evidence-based strategies that we have chosen to ensure that our school and district continues to improve. I want to, of course, say a special thanks to Bev for all of her technical expertise and support as we've crafted a budget. And of course, above and beyond our staff who've done an amazing job this year during very challenging circumstances. And they put their budget requests in, which are represented in this document tonight. So I'm just going to speak briefly about our goals. A school budget, it's really important that we ensure that we're funding programs, services, highly qualified staff, and materials that have been identified as essential to meeting the needs of our students. We want to make sure that the budget moves us from where we are now to where we want to be, and that is consistent with the vision that's been established and adopted by the Board of Education, the community, and our staff. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about our spending plan, which is our budget, as well as our capital plan. The next few slides, I'm just going to say up front that they're for your review at your leisure. I'm not going to go through each of the educational slides tonight, but it's just information for you to have at hand. The slides do illustrate what is included in this budget and some of our examples of the services, strategies, and structures that we have in place. So I am going to go through these slides, but again, you have them for your review, and I'm happy to take questions. So as we begin to craft our budget, we have to first look at what our known costs are. When we think about known costs, we're talking about our contracts, our salaries, transportations, fuel estimates, health insurance estimates, anything that we're pretty aware of that will be rolled over into the next budget cycle. We also take a look at our grants to see if we should be expecting the same level of funding from the state and federal government. And in this year, as you referenced earlier, we anticipate some additional rescue funds, which hopefully will become clarified for us over the next few weeks. We also look at our budget history to see what the spending has looked like, because sometimes items can stay in budget lines and aren't fully expended. And then we have to ask ourselves the question of is that item essential or not? And then most importantly, we look at our current student needs, which includes tuition estimates, contracted services, and then our staffing patterns to meet the needs of our children. This year, again, has presented a bit of a challenge to project what we need next year in a budget, because some of the needs are unknown at this time, because we're not really sure what the configuration will be and what the expectations would be from the state regarding how we will function next year. Will we continue to have remote instruction for students in addition to having in-person instruction? At this point, we don't have those answers. So this is our best thoughts at the moment as to what the budget would look like for next year. So the Board of Education voted to put forward a 2021-2022 town appropriation request of $13,061,315, which is a 2.71% increase from the 2020-2021 town appropriated budget. This slide just shows a bit of a historical picture of what the town appropriations have been since 2017-18, just to give a little bit of context. This slide shows when you look at our budget, you're looking at high school costs, which are primarily fixed costs, and costs for Porter, which is our pre-K through 8. So this slide shows you from 1819 what was the actual cost, then 1920, which was the approved budget, 2021, and then of course what we're projecting and requesting at this moment. You'll see the high school costs are a 4.5% increase, and the Porter increase is a 1.9%. The high school costs include things like our tuition for our high school students, any outplacements, students who may be attending school outside of our community, and transportation for our high school students as well as for our special education students who are attending other placements. This is another slide that shows the historical perspective of special education costs, since special education is often one of the larger drivers in a budget. So you'll see from 1819 the actual costs, and then again, of course, approved budget and our proposed budget. So you will see a slight increase, and these are based on actual students at the moment. The increase from last year to or this year to next year's budget in terms of students based on their level of need. A team may recommend that a student needs to attend a specialized program elsewhere, and these are the associated costs. High school services are the services that students, when they're, say, attending Bolton or E.O. Smith or the tech school, there's an additional cost in addition to for special education services. So this figure represents the anticipated cost for our students at the high school level next year. And then transportation, again, is for students who are either being transported to our schools or to other placements based on their needs. And that gives you a little bit of a picture. You'll notice that each line has increased for next year. So we have a few items that we'd want to just make note of for our increases and our decreases. What you'll see here in terms of contracted salary, we have a solid understanding of what our staff at this moment will be, what their increase will be for next year. And other than our non-certified staff who we are currently entering negotiations with. So there is a factor included, but we won't know the final amount of increase or until that process has been completed. You'll also see special education professional services. There's an increase in these lines that provide services such as speech language, occupational therapist, board certified behavior analysts. And again, based on student need. Transportation, you'll see an increase, which is a 4% increase for our our bus contract with M&J, as well as an increase in special education transportation, which you saw on the previous slide. You also will see a tuition increase, which includes our high school tuition costs increase, as well as special education tuition increase. Electrical. We were thrilled to see that we were saving money from our solar panels before COVID came to be. Now we are not seeing that savings at this moment, and we're anticipating until we hear otherwise that we will have to run our exhaust fans as we are now based on COVID requirements. We need to run our fans on high to really be moving circulation of air out of the building and fresh air in. So we have seen an increase because we are, literally the warm air is going out the exhaust. So this is what we're anticipating for next year. And then we do see an increase in software programs, which as we're putting new curricular programs in place, they often have either a software program that goes along with, or we have like bulked up our intervention programs for students. So you'll see that reflected in that area. And let's see, also notable decreases. I'm going to come back to the health insurance, although you may have some information around this topic, but it's a little bit of a broader topic, so I'll come right back there. Other benefits is really an adjustment of actual people taking advantage of 403B retirement plan. So Bev kind of took a good look at that, and this is aligned with our actual enrollments. You also see next year the legal fees reduced because we will not have any contract negotiations. We're not in the cycle next year, so we won't have to be engaged in that process. So group health benefits, we've been a member of CT CHIP, which is a consortium of Board of Ed and towns for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, not terribly long ago, one of the communities needed to remove themselves from the consortium. Financially, it was a substantial challenge to them this year. So with that, we understood that from talking to our broker, that our increase could be 23% increase if we stayed with our current provider, which is Cigna. We asked them to go out to market for us all as individuals, and also, for the town and the Board of Ed to go out together to take a look at what was available for us for health benefits and providers. So we then found an 18% increase. So we were feeling a little better about that. And now we have a couple options. And one of the options was a 2.2% increase, which is reflected in this budget at the moment. We are hoping once we go through our process with our staff members in terms of notification and sharing the health benefits that we would be offering with a new provider, that we could see this number decrease substantially. So that is our hope, and we should have that information, I think, within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks. So those were our primary changes. The things we're still are waiting, as I mentioned, on the health insurance. We're also waiting on oil and diesel. So we'll wait to see what those figures look like over the next few weeks. For our staffing proposal, the chart really just gives you a sense of the certified and non-certified staff since 2016. What we've included in this proposed budget is 2 FTE or full-time equivalent of staff. I won't say they're actual people, but spots. And we anticipate using those funds for intervention for any gaps identified post-COVID, or to address class size, to have smaller groups for post-COVID, to have a more focused instruction for children. These are, at this moment, we do know that we are receiving ESSER 2, which is a COVID relief next round for us. We would be receiving, it's almost 102,000. Bev would have to give you the exact 101 something dollars. So that is reflected in this spending plan. We, as referenced earlier, Kelly raised, we would be receiving potentially some of the, is it rescue funds, I think they're calling that at this moment?
American Rescue.
Thank you. So we anticipate, we've had a number that's been out there recently of an additional $200,000, although we have not received a grant proposal or the parameters for us specifically yet. So we're still waiting to hear about those funds. What we've heard to date about the ESSER funds is that we cannot supplant it as in addition to the budget. So you'll see those positions in there. The ESSER grant funds will support those additional services projected. For our student population, we had a demographic study completed in 2016. And at that point, they projected our pre-K through 8 enrollment to be 381 students. Our current projection for next year is around 429 students. We still have some estimates for pre-K and K as we're still in our enrollment process. Although I think we have 400 and, let me see what my note is here, 411 students attending Porter right now, and we have 22 students who have chosen to access homeschooling this year. So we anticipate the majority of those students returning. So this is a fairly accurate projection. Our demographic study showed for grades 9 through 12, they projected 219. We're projecting around 224. So we're still having a nice solid number of students attending our schools. In terms of our capital requests, the Board of Education voted of a total request amount of $175,000. We currently have 2 projects that we have out in completing feasibility studies. One is a track design and upgrade, and the other is an air conditioning project for Porter School. Both we're waiting to see what is feasible, and would this be an incremental project? for each of those, but we're asking for a placeholder to start, accruing funds because we expect, whether it's a whole project or whether it's just the upgrade of the track instead of a whole new surface, whether it's some air conditioning and not the whole building, it still will be, I think, that'd be fairly costly project. So we'd like to start those now. And the rest of our requests are pretty much maintenance, our ongoing maintenance. We have some paving to take care of in our back playground where we have some substantial cracks that we would worry that people would be tripping over, as well as some repair of our sidewalks and parking lots. And then the floor repair and replacement and repair of $5,000, which we have some funds, I believe, in addition in that line. So it'll cover our routine repairs. This year, we're also out of our appropriated budget. This year, we are completing 2 capital projects for a total of about $60,000. We will be replacing, doing another ceiling tile replacement project, as well as replacing sinks and countertops in classrooms, which are, starting to rot away a bit. So overall, this is our spending plan with capital and our appropriated requests. And thank you all. And hopefully you enjoy those other slides at some point. And I'm happy to take questions. And let me.
Maria, I had a couple quick
Yeah,
questions.
sure. Of course.
My first question is, and these are probably kind of stupid questions,
No
but,
such thing. Not in
but,
school anyway. Questions are how you learn.
but the past year,
Yes.
how much of your teaching was virtual learning rather than in-person learning where kids came into school?
So we started our school year hybrid, which was 2 days a week in person and 3 days a week remote for all of our students. Families also had the option to be fully remote so that they could access instruction from home with a teacher. So that did stretch us quite a bit to designate teachers who would be remote instruction teachers, as well as have people teaching in classrooms. So what we did, I think it was October 15th, we brought pre-K through 4 back to 4 days per week. And we just brought back, I think almost 2 weeks ago now, a week and a half ago, our 5th and 6th grade students to 4 days per week. And on the 22nd, our 7th and 8th graders will be coming back 4 days per week. And we are discussing at this point what happens on Wednesdays, which has been remote, but we anticipate being back fully in school within the next, I would say, in the next month. So we've done a pretty good job of getting kids back in, and it has been thoughtful, careful, and safe.
So you're thinking that the next school year, beginning in September or August, will be pretty much back to normal?
So I think that it's hard to know because they really haven't put the information out yet. I think there's a lot of variables given that the vaccine has, it's starting to roll out. There's a real question as to whether there'll be vaccines for students in the fall, should families choose to access that. So I think that we probably will continue to have some level of distancing in the fall. I would expect students will still be wearing masks and we'll be doing lots of cleaning and disinfecting. That's a guess. And if I will be interested to see if they keep the remote instruction in place for families. I really hope that everyone comes back and we don't have to do that juggle, but I will wonder if the state will continue having students, allowing that option for families, given that a vaccine may not be available for their children in the fall.
Okay,
So,
I have another question regarding that, but before we
Sure.
get into that,
Yeah.
another question I had is, I know that one of the most important things in getting kids back to school is, because of COVID and everything else, is adequate ventilation. I know that you mentioned the cap around air conditioning, but are we doing anything to make sure that the school has adequate ventilation, at least based on the criteria that the CDC indicates?
Yeah, we're actually very fortunate. Mike Sylvester, our our building manager, the person who takes care of our facilities, when this all first started and there were lots of conversations about the exhaust system, our school has an amazing exhaust system and it can pull out more than we probably need to be pulled out at any given time. So we felt very positive about that. And we just had all of the ducts cleaned. So we had just done the whole building, which really hadn't been, none of the ducts had been cleaned forever. So we had just done that work. I think it was the summer before. So I think our ventilation, we feel very good about. We don't feel like we need to make any more structural changes to the building other than the air conditioning, which has been an ongoing conversation.
And by the way, I think
Mhm.
Mike's awesome, so.
He is
you're
awesome.
Very lucky to have him.
Yeah, he's doing
Uh,
great work. It's been a busy year for him as well.
So my other question is simply that with all of the COVID, how did that impact in the past year? How did that impact the cost to the town of Columbia? And how do you project that to impact the cost in the future, especially considering that there's funding coming down the road?
So I think, this year we did with the funding that came through the ESSER funding and the second round, and I know Bev has been submitting to FEMA and to every option that she can for reimbursement. I think we did a really good job with staying within our budget this year. I can't say that we didn't come back to the town for additional resources. So we felt this year has been financially manageable for us, even with the additional costs and adjustments that we needed to make. For next year, at this moment, based on the information that we have, I do believe that this budget will support what we need to have in place for students next year. There's not a lot of extra in this budget, there's not fluff, but I believe it has what we need at this moment in time. Should that change, I do anticipate some additional revenue, as we mentioned, coming through. And we'll hope to hear more about that shortly. And I think there is still an ongoing question whether it is can you use the funds to support your operating budget, or is it in addition to? What my worry will be moving forward is looking at our budget down the line, because as we add this revenue now, we don't want to hit a cliff that at some point the revenue goes away. And then we have a gap between, where our budget was and what we've been spending by $300,000. And that's not tenable. So my goal will be, as this funding comes through, for me to think about how I kind of stretch that out over a few year period, and what is our plan for when those funds stop. So we're being really thoughtful about how to manage that and not to tie up all of the funding within salaries, which is, more of the challenge.
Okay.
I anticipate summer services, but yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Jeff, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, you mentioned not necessarily 2 more teachers, but 2 more spots. And we were gonna you said there would be money coming that would be COVID money, so to speak, to offset that. When that money stops, do those positions go away?
So that's what I was trying to reference right there. The question,
That's what
I would
thought.
say, yeah, it's hard to know. I would say yes at this moment. However, I don't know what the projections might look like in terms of staffing needs in 2 years or 3 years from now. So
Okay. Yeah.
my belief is yes.
Okay, because once that money's allocated, that sets a new MBR for you, and we can't really backtrack it at that point. So yeah,
No, I understand.
okay.
It's a challenge. It is a challenge. That's why I'm trying to really be thoughtful about how I play this out over time.
All right.
Maria, one of the things I found interesting is that you were projecting that the increase in the Porter School preschool through 8th grade is going to be higher than expected. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking that's the reason why you need more staff. So
Well,
you
I think
expect that to continue, right?
I have one grade that I'd like to have another section of. So that's one of the groupings I'm looking at. I'm looking at some of our classrooms that might have more need than others, to see if we need to be a little flexible with our scheduling so that we can have smaller cohorts. And then we do need to have more intervention services. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be looking at staffing with our administrative team to try to play that out and see. But I do believe that what we have in our current budget is should meet the needs as they are in this moment. Again, the big unknown for me is, if we have students move in with special education needs, because that changes, everything. Or if students need more specialized placement. But at this moment in time, I think we're doing pretty well.
I do have some questions, but does anyone else have questions before I go?
I think Brian
Yeah,
does.
I do. Yeah,
Go ahead.
I had one question just about the benefits. So if I understand this correctly, you have a 2.2% increase for this year. The numbers you started with sounded scarier than that.
Yes.
20 originally, and then 18, and now so 2.2 is in there. When will you have that number finalized before the budget vote or the budget approval?
So here's the challenge we have. We know where we expect to be going with the health benefits, which would be minus 16% Bev, which is another 200 and
Could be anywhere, depending on everything, it could be anywhere $200 to maybe $300,000 in savings, but we won't know that till we get the rates and we look closer at what's being provided by the new carrier.
So
And-
if I understood this, then last year you were tied with the town in that consortium, correct?
Yes.
Is this new one are you going to still be with the town, or is the Board of Ed going to be on their own?
No, we'll be with the town.
It's a
Okay,
joint
so
effort. Joint
Okay,
effort.
great. So
Yeah, I
that,
just have, I'm sorry.
that's okay. So that potential 200,000, is that like town-wide, or is that just the Board of Ed allocation?
That's just the
Reduction.
Board of Ed.
Just the Board
Just
of
the
Ed.
Board of Ed.
Okay, yeah.
So it could bring us much closer to a zero, coming in at a zero, if that happens. And I have a meeting with staff and our insurance broker tomorrow afternoon, our presidents of our unions, and we have a process that we need to go through with our certified staff. They have contract language that talks about switching carriers. So we need to kind of walk through that process, and they have 30 days in which to review and then determine if they're going to go to arbitration or if they're going to accept and feel that it's a comparable plan, which I believe it's a very strong plan that we intend to move to. So I don't anticipate an issue, but we do have to walk through it thoughtfully. So they may say to us in 2 weeks, yes, this is all great. Then we could come back to you folks and say, we can make some reductions.
Okay, the last 2 years, I've been extremely impressed with your ability to manage the budget and cut areas, and you've been things that you've said have come to fruition. So I'm hoping that this will too, but I think you've done a great job keeping the budget within reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I always want to be upfront, and because I understand that the town has competing demands for funds, limited pool. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions? Mark, do you see any other hands? I can't see everybody, so.
I don't see anyone else at the moment, and no one in the chat.
Okay.
Nope.
All right, so I have 3 questions. We have more kids going to high school, or is it because the rates increased?
We had an increase in students, but the rate is not, it was like a 1.5% increase. And then primarily it's a special education tuition increase.
Okay. So then my other question is it's kind of twofold, and it's, I'm not sure of the answer, but maybe it's more about a thought process. Sure. Is, despite the best efforts of all of our educators, I think the empiric evidence is that this past year has been really detrimental for children because the remote learning just hasn't been as effective, which is to be expected. But going forward, have you considered whether you need to retain some kind of a specialist that can come in and assess and maybe come up with some recommendations to help move us forward, so that maybe that means an extra half hour a school day, or maybe it means an extra, special ed teacher to help with certain things? I mean, not just, thinking about it yourselves, but is there possibility of getting a specialist to come in and help you make that assessment? And should we be building something into the budget for that purpose?
So I think it's a great question. Quite honestly, it's been such a busy year that we're trying to keep pace with all these decisions.
I know.
I know, and we're all in the same boat here. So at this moment, we're doing our own analysis of student performance data. We have information about students who may be struggling with more social, emotional, behavioral needs, and our academic needs. So we feel comfortable doing that piece, but we are talking as a superintendent's group about different options in terms of summer services and other programming that might be beneficial to our students. Also, I just received an email today that CAPS, which is our superintendent's group, is partnering with the State Department of Ed, and they're offering resources through retired superintendents and other people to offer support. And I believe that will be free of charge. So I will check on that one though, and I'm happy to get back to you at our next meeting because I do think having someone come in and taking, a broader lens when you're not living in it day to day, especially during the middle of a crisis, it would be great to have someone else's perspective to make some
And so closely related to that is the issue of the high school, because I, have complete faith that you guys, our Board of Education is great and can assess the needs of our kids, but we don't really know what those other boards of education are doing in Bolton and Mansfield. And I'm hoping that they're doing a good job, as are you, but do we have any way to get metrics to see what the performance numbers are? Like you're assessing performance for last year and this year and next year, and you'll be able to assess. Do we know that they're doing that? Because I think especially the high school kids were really had a hard time.
It was so hard. It was so hard. And it's
they
still
never
so
got
hard.
the 4 days. They just started the 4 days now.
Yeah, it's very rare. Middle schools and high schools, they've been out more than in, and a lot of people, closing for a prolonged period of times. We've been so fortunate. We haven't had to do widespread closing. So I do talk to regularly, almost, definitely weekly with our partners, with E.O. Smith superintendent, as well as Bolton superintendent. So I'm happy to pose this question to them to see what they're thinking about and to kind of gather some data and see what, I think they're in the same conversation that I'm in with our superintendent's group. So I would be happy to, follow up with them.
Because our kids are going to college. And so, high school kids they have less time to recover than, middle school kids. They have, 4 years to recover.
Yeah.
Juniors and seniors don't.
And I know that some of the bigger questions too for many people is how are the colleges going to be making, adapting? Because I know this year, they did not have the same requirements for many kids going in because you didn't have some of the information. Kids weren't playing sports necessarily. They weren't maybe in classes and had the same access as they did before. So I think there was a bit of a shift in most of the colleges and universities in terms of, making some adjustments for kids. But I know that in terms of special education or students who have more significant needs at the high school level, I hear more about those adjustments based on Barbara Wilson, our Director of Student Services, works at Porter and also serves our students at the high school levels. So I do know kind of what's happening there, but for the general population of students, it's probably a good conversation for me to go back and start to have. So I will do that. I know it's what a hard year for
maybe
kids.
EastCon, I know, might have some services that they offer. I know we retained them once to do some survey for us. So
and they've been incredibly helpful. We have at our weekly meeting, we have a weekly superintendent's meeting we have had for the last year and a half, which has been great. And they've been a member of that group as well as Fran, who's the head of CAPS. So we've had like a really strong group of, and we've all been working together to figure this out as we've been going. So this will be our next conversation where we go from here.
So great,
actually,
thank you.
You're welcome, Kelly.
Sure.
Maria, I had a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
I think in the past that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think we had like a liaison between our Board of Education and the Board of Education for E.O. Smith and some of the high schools that our kids went to. We had a liaison that would sit in on the meetings so that we would be up to date about what was happening. Is that happening now so that we know what's happening
So we do not
discussion.
have, I don't believe we have a member attending the meetings. You know, I would have to defer to Chris about history. I honestly, he's shaking his head no.
Nope.
But again, I'm happy. I speak to the superintendents all of the time, and I'm sure that we can reach out as from the board too and find out kind of what their plans are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking is that
Sure.
we have to make sure that we stay on top of what plans the high schools that our kids are attending,
Yeah,
addressing the issues that Kelly brought up. So I think that's
Yeah.
really,
Right.
I agree.
And the risk is
Academic-
if they're gonna need more money, are they going to kind of have a one-time, not, I don't want to call it a fine, because I don't want it to sound negative, but a one-time here, pay us a little extra because we need to do this stuff
Right.
next year for the kids. So I just think it's something we should keep in mind for potential budget costs, but that may be
Right.
part of the American Rescue Fund, could be used for that if those things do come up.
And I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to partner together, because
Yeah.
if, you know, we're close enough and we can share resources, and even if we're going to bring someone in to help us, it might be something that we partner with, or, you know, different services. So I think it's worth the conversation. We did try to do a fair amount of that over, you know, the last, I think there were some schools more than others who didn't have some of the remote teachers, so they were sharing and kind of pooling resources. We were fortunate to kind of make it through on our own.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Oh, I'll tell you. We've been very creative.
It's good. All right, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maria. I don't think anyone else has any further questions. Do you see any more?
Yeah. Lynette Dooley has a hand up, it looks like.
Okay. Lynette?
Let's see if I can unmute her. Ask to unmute. Lynette, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, how's that better?
Perfect.
Yes. we
Sorry
can-
about that. I just wanted to jump in and just say a couple things. So as a parent of an EO Smith student, I can say that, you know, meeting with the guidance counselor, they're really taking a look at where kids are, any gaps that they might have, preparations for, you know, the future years to come. And also, I was a part of the EO Smith parent community, which worked with the administration in regards to their principles and vision and things like that. So I know that they really do keep a close eye on what's going on, and the direction of the school, their vision, their mission, et cetera, et cetera. And also I thought in the new Biden proposal package, there was monies designated to, how do I say this right? Covering the gaps that might have happened over the last year or so.
Yes.
So if there are additional resources that are needed to try to assess or get our kids where they need to be, because they might be behind for whatever reason, they were remote, or just, you know, whatever happened, they couldn't access the internet, all the different circumstances that we hear, that there is money in that package to do that. So you know, I'm hoping those can help bridge the gaps with things. So I just kind of wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Lynette.
Mhm.
Any other questions before we move on to the Board of Selectmen's presentation? Okay.
Thank you all very
If
much.
None.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. We
Yeah.
appreciate it. Mark, would you
Of
like to
course.
do the presentation?
Okay, great. I'll launch it. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. So you can't see it yet, can you?
Nope.
nope.
Hold on.
Yep, that's.
There you go.
There it
There
is.
we go.
Thank you.
But what are you looking at? You looking at the presentation or?
Town of Columbia fiscal year 21-22 budget
Okay, great.
with a pretty seal.
Perfect. Okay, and again, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen, Stephen Everett, for all he does, staying in touch daily. Maria, can you get whoever's trying to get in? And you got it?
Yeah, I'll take care of everything
Okay, thank you.
around this. Thank you.
Rob Hellstrom for being our Deputy First Selectman, Lisa Napolitano, William O'Brien, and Judy Ortiz for rounding out the board. And also our finance director, Beverly Cirillo, who's always a key part of our decision making, and Jen for pulling everything together, Lavoy, on a daily basis. So next, we'll get into a big part of every budget, which is often not realized how important it is, but revenues, because we know our expenses often go up, but when our revenues go down, as you're seeing here, they're down 129,000. That hurts. And right now, we're anticipating at the moment, since we haven't wrapped up the budget, we'll hold taxes steady. We're going to assume that licensing and permitting revenues will continue to rise. During COVID, they went up quite a bit, so we're counting on another almost 10% increase in that revenue. Intergovernmental revenue, you can see a snapshot if you drop down to look at notable changes down below here. A breakout of this $48,000 reduction is really due to education equalization grants, which Maria covered. And that's still steady, but the special ed excess costs, we're not over the excess cost, so we're going to take a $90,000 hit there. And LoSiP, we used it. We're not going to use it in this budget. We're going to save it. So because we're not using our LoSiP grant, we won't have that revenue. So we'll have a shortfall there. And
Why are we not using a LoSiP?
we're saving it for a bigger project.
Okay,
We saved LoSiP quite a bit until we finally bought the whole salt shed with it last time.
yep.
So it won't go away. We'll just hold on to it. On the operating side, Maria has already gone in detail on the health insurance. Right now, the town and the Board of Ed are together on health insurance, and we're equally sharing and making it all become a reality. Right now, the town, if this all works out, right now we're up the 2.25%, but if this comes through, we could be looking at a reduction just like the Board of Ed. And staff changes, this budget includes an extra 8 hours for our social worker. Right now, the social worker is working 2 days a week. During the pandemic, we've given her a temporary additional 8 hours to help with getting people enrolled in their shots and through issues they're having as a result of COVID with food and heating and things like that. So right now we're looking at another 8 hours. And IT, we did an IT security assessment in year 1920 budget. It recommended increased security measures in the infrastructure, which we've started, but we did not complete this year due to COVID. And we're going to continue working on that in 21, 22. And I'll go over a little more on what some of those costs will be to the budget. And fuel costs, we have not locked in yet due to the fuel continues to rise. So we're hoping that eventually it will calm down and come back to a more reasonable price to extend that contract. And the resident trooper costs, they just came in today. It looks like I might be able to reduce that by around $5,000. So let me get down here to some of the, right now, this budget holds a $67,000 increase on the town side for healthcare. I'm hoping that'll go away and actually be a decrease within the next month. Printing, we have an extra $1,600. The Views magazine, we're getting so much requests for articles, interesting articles on the history of Columbia and things that our citizens are doing that it really needs an extra 4 pages. If advertising increased, that would cover it. But at the moment, we need around $400 per quarter to put in an extra 4 pages of articles. Commercial insurance, we had to buy our own cyber policy It used to be included free of charge with Kerma, our insurance carrier. But because so many of the towns are being hit with cyber warfare, they're being held hostage. They're having to pay Bitcoins to get their access back to their databases. That some towns have been hit with over $100,000 in losses trying to come back online. So it got a little out of control. So we all had to go out and fill out an application. Ours came in at only $5,000, I believe, because I've been talking to some other towns that aren't too much bigger than us, and they're looking at much higher quotes. But I think it's because we had such a good insurance game plan ahead of all this happening that I think the carrier was happy to see all the precautions we've already taken and the game plan we have put in place to continue to harden our infrastructure. And it's also not hardening the infrastructure, it's also training the employees, and that's the part we're going to be doing this year, because most of your cyber warfare comes in through inadvertently opening a Trojan bomb that gets into your backup and holds your information hostage. We also are looking at a little more money in all this IT upgrades to our equipment. We had to increase that budget $3,300 for new processors and some updated laptops. On the assessor's side of our budget, through Mary LaValle, she feels that we can remove the cost of the GIS mapping maintenance. She was able to handle that. So that's the $3,500 reduction. Financial planning out of Bev's office. We have to do a full Gatsby actuarial valuation along with an annual Gatsby disclosure. So that luckily doesn't hit every year, but this year it's going to raise for the OPEB valuation. That'll raise that by $5,700. Social services for the extra 8 hours will be on our social worker $12,670. The firefighting through our Columbia Volunteer Fire Department, they've held their request flat for many, many years. But we're one of the last volunteer fire departments, Andover and Columbia, in the whole eastern part of Connecticut. We're the last fully volunteer fire department. Every other town has paid staff services intermixed with their volunteers. They've requested some more funding to actually offset the cost of doing a membership drive and also covering remediation of the fees that the volunteers experience in being a volunteer. So improving the payback for their costs. So that's coming to a total of $43,850. Public Works has a decrease, and this is only an accounting decrease. We created a new department called Building Official and Facilities. What we did was removed the building official and the facilities that was all lumped into Public Works, so we'd have better financial controls. And because the facilities manager is our building official, we moved it over to his budget. So there's a $122,000 transfer really over to this line. But first I'll just hit waste disposal by contract with Willie Waste went up on our multi-year contract, and the building official line went up. So it went up because we shifted 122,000 plus some extra money for facilities maintenance and repair projects. So that's up by 146,000. Library services originally came in with almost a $13,000 increase, but just recently adjusted down a little bit in light of the reduction in healthcare costs. And they have requested this increase to keep their programs funded and to recover from some of their COVID expenses. The lake management has requested an additional $2,000 for some testing equipment. They want to try to create a better, more consistent database of oxygen levels and clarity of the water and things that they can do themselves. They originally requested $10,000 in equipment, but we felt we weren't ready for that sophisticated equipment yet. So they're starting with some of the simpler equipment. And the rec area operations has gone up mainly due to the increased cost of porta potties because we're cleaning them more often during COVID and we have some extra porta potties. So they requested another $3,000. So the total overall increase of the Board of Selectmen is $260,000 or 6%, but we expect that to come down quite a bit once we get our real numbers in group insurance. On the capital side, that's where a big chunk of the town's budget is. And there's a lot of projects in the work this year. Just really road paving, because of road paving is really determined by which roads we're going to be paving, whether they're long or how much work is involved in that road with drainage and things like that. So right now, the road budget for 21-22 is $348,000, but we're going to take $58,000 that we have in excess funds from previous road projects and offset that. And that'll bring us down. Plus, we're going to use some town aid road funds. So the new appropriation is actually 205. Well, it's 290, but we're going to use both excess and town aid and road to get that down. Then box culvert, we're continually putting in 125,000. So this is our second payment of 4 payments to do the Hunt Road box culvert bridge. And we also have a steep grant to go against that project too. Rec area, we have 203,000, and it was actually a request for 255,000, but again, we had 52,000 of unused funds, so we have it down to 203,000. And that is to continue to finish up the major part of the rec park, which is the concession stand. That concession stand is critical because it has a maintenance garage or a storage facility behind it, and it has a pavilion tied into it. And that will also store the mechanicals for a well we need in order to water the girls' softball field. The drainage was so great, or it's actually draining so well that that field died last summer. It went totally brown. So we have to water it. So we need a well. We need a well for the concession stand as well, so it'll share that well. And we need a mechanical room to put the well mechanicals in. So all that is tied in with your 203,000. And we're continuing to work on Rec Park with just our Public Works Department. They're putting in a whole parking lot right now all by themselves. And they're doing a great job. If you ever get up there to see the amount of work, it's amazing. Next on DPW equipment. Right now, what's needed, we have our big mower with our road arm side attachment that does all the roadside mowing to keep our sight lines open, is a 1992 mower. We're budgeted for a new one with 150,000. We have to replace a 2015 zero-turn mower for doing all of our lawns. And we need forklifts for our loader at 6,000. So that came up to 167,500. And we're going to use 29,500 of unused funding from other projects to bring that down to $138,000 request. Transfer station, we need 15,000 to design a bulk waste roof cover. And that roof cover is needed to keep the rain out of our bulk waste because that adds weight that we end up paying for when we dispose of the bulk waste. So we're going to use 10,000 of lamb covers that we felt were not going to work out towards the engineering. So we're only requesting 5,000. Improvements to buildings. This is a concept our building official came up with and the Board of Selectmen are supporting. What we've done in the past, if we had HVAC funding in all of our building capital project funds. So the senior center had 50,000 put away to replace all their HVAC. The fire department had, I think, 10,000 put away for some repairs on their HVAC. Town hall needed money for an HVAC upgrade so we can have heating, cooling on the town hall side. So what we did was we took all these budgets and put them into one HVAC budget, which right now we have 70,000 in HVAC compartmentalized budget. We put it all into one. We're going to use 40,000 of it to redo the town hall this year. And then in this budget, we're asking for another 10,000. We're always going to keep 40,000 in an HVAC budget, like steady. So if we use 10,000 one year, we'll replace it with 10. If we use 20, we'll replace it with 20. But what that'll do is instead of like the evaluation of senior center was, it wasn't at a point where it needed to be replaced. One side of it needed new controllers because they were running on DOS. They were that old. But we need enough money that the HVAC goes down. We can replace it quickly because that is the heating system for senior center. And then we'd have the money. We talked about the fact that we could go to the Board of Selectmen and 5-pack and town meeting because it's capital, but that would take over a month. So the new thought is keep a steady 40,000 in HVAC, use it as we need it to keep all our HVAC systems running. And that way we're not lumping money in accounts that are sitting there waiting for a system that might not be ready to go, might be able to get a few more years out of it, but now we'll have enough money that we can fix anything that needs to be done. So we have adding 10,000 to HVAC and 15,000. We're trying to figure out how to get in Murphy House bathrooms that are accessible from the outside instead of going in the
On
building.
the bottom row, Judy. And then over to the stuff. Oh, Lynn Sharp.
What's that? Is that a question?
Somebody's not muted.
No, I'm just muting everybody, Mark.
Okay. Murphy House, we're looking at some engineering to get the bathrooms instead of the inside house, but shifted to the outside access. And also engineering for, we need more garage storage for our vehicles at DPW. So we're going to engineer some bays. I mean, we just in this last, they're not mufflers, they're, we had our, oh, I can't remember what it's called.
Catalytic converter.
Catalytic converters.
Thank you. Catalytic converter. We had 2 stolen from DPW trucks and 1 stolen from our senior center van. The senior center van one to fix it was $1,100. So luckily the 2 trucks that were hit at DPW were older trucks that we were about to sell. So now we got to find out if it's worth fixing them. But that's in there for DPW facilities. The bridge at Hop River, we had to go up because the bridge design got a little more expensive. And that's going to be our 3rd payment in 4 payments to complete the Hop River Bridge, what we'll be contributing with Coventry. The Columbia Lake, we had a scare when our gate malfunctioned this season. Our new Public Works Director, Beth Lunt, was able to find a very unique manufacturer that could actually repair the gate component that broke. He was recommended through her research into dam component manufacturers. But what she wants to do is have the gate fully inspected and engineered, looking at it just to make sure the rest of the gate components are all in working order and what shape they're in. Tree removal will continue to hold that capital budget line item at 100,000. It's going real well. That's the amount we need to keep up with all the trees that are dying. We have a new generator in at the senior center in order to have heating and cooling capabilities when the power goes out. I realize that the actual facility for an emergency, if the whole town needs a place to have massive showers and water and food and eating, would be the actual Porter School. But a lot of times with power outages, they're not for very long. And the seniors are very comfortable going to the senior center, and this would allow them to continue to go to the senior center, continue to eat there, play cards there, do all their events there, and have all the components they need to move around without shutting down the school for a town-wide emergency center. A lot of times these are just during the day, and usually we don't open an emergency center unless it's very extended. So right now, with the help of Public Works, we feel we can do that for 25,000. And the fire department, it was a $175,000 request this year, and that's 125,000 as the second to last installment towards a rescue vehicle, and $50,000 request for an SUV that they use to transport firemen to actual fire calls, to training calls. And right now they're using an old diesel truck that is not reliable anymore, and it's too costly to keep running. So right now, the capital appropriation last year was 778,500. This year it's 1,161,000 for a 49% increase, or $383,000 increase. So we know that's a big ask on the town side, and what we're going to ask, I've talked to the selectmen. They would like to use general fund to offset some of this, but in light of what's coming down the path from money coming in from the state and from the feds, what we might want to do is hold off on some of these capital projects to see what that money could pay for, because I'm afraid if the money is in the budget, that might disqualify it. But some of these heating cooling systems possibly could be paid with these funds. The generator might be able to be paid with these funds. Rec Park, I know with COVID, there's a huge focus in getting people outdoors, having a more sanitary bathroom with better eating facilities at the park might qualify. So my guess is we might be really cutting this capital request back. And then I don't know how long it's going to take for us to really find out how these, we might have to pass a budget before we know. And in light of that, we might have to just hold off. And if we decide some of these capital projects, we still want them in, if they don't qualify, we might have to come back for a special Board of Selectmen 5-pack town meeting, something like that. So I'm hoping we get more clarity in the next month, but we'll see as we go. Right now, a summary of appropriations. You have Board of Selectmen going up 6.9. I hope that comes way down. We've already discussed Board of Ed. Debt, thank goodness we actually have a 0 debt year. I don't think there's many towns that can claim that. Capital between the Board of Ed and the town. And also the Board of Ed, some of their capital requests with air conditioning might be able to be covered from some of this American Rescue money. So we're hoping we can get that way down. Contingency is staying flat. The dog fund went up a little bit due to some of our expenses in animal control. And everything else is flat. So we're looking at right now, total of a 5.49% increase. Total budget of 19,046,000. And right now, a mill rate increase of 3.09 mils, which we hope will be coming way down by the time we're through this process. Because we don't want to be hitting the residents with a average home value of $250,000 with a $772 property tax increase. So we have had a proud history of really holding our mill rate steady with some small increases. And I want to thank you and look forward to answering questions and working through the whole budget process. And I know the Board of Selectmen would love if you come up with some cuts that you'd like them to consider, for them to be able to come back and give their thoughts as well. Thank you.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, Ernie.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. My tablet died for some reason.
Welcome back, Ernie.
Thank you.
Does anybody
So-
need a screen, or should I get rid of it?
Get rid of the screen.
Okay.
So Ernie, do you want to take over now?
Nope.
All right, does anybody have questions for Mark? Jeff?
With the, given the social worker an extra 8 hours a week, does this entitle her to benefits, health insurance and all that? It would increase the cost?
Yes, it would increase the healthcare side by a single it'd be a single healthcare benefit package.
All right, she's not eligible for that now? It's
No.
16 hours, but when we move her to 24, she becomes eligible for all that.
Yes, anything over 20 authorizes you for single, and Bev, what's it over 30 for family?
Okay, I have a quick reaction to actually what Jeff brought up. I worked at DCF for 35 years, and I know the importance of providing services to communities, services like our social worker does. And I think it's terribly important, especially in these COVID times, to make sure that we have good social services for our community, good health, mental health services for. So I strongly support increasing the hours for the social worker. Now, I do have a couple other comments. I don't have any questions yet because I really have to analyze the Board of Selectmen's budget. To me, it seems like it's exorbitant. Like we're spending stuff that I'm not sure if we need to spend. And I think in the upcoming budget sessions, we have to take a really good look at all of these different increases and whether or not we can afford them and whether or not they're justified. And most of them, by the way, are a lot more than what we're spending for another 8 hours for a social worker. So I think it's going to take time to sit down and look at everything and analyze where we're at. I was pleased with the Board of Education budget. To me, it made a lot of sense. And I think one of the most important things that a community provides is education for kids. And to me, I didn't think the increases were exorbitant. I do think the Board of Selectmen increases are exorbitant. So anyway, I want to look at it. I don't really have, there was so much thrown at us, I don't really have a reaction at this point. But I think we have to take a really, really good look at it. There's no way that I would agree to increase our tax rate in the amount that has been presented. I think we have to figure out some way to lower that. So anyway, that's my
Thank
statement.
you, Dick. Does
Okay.
anyone else have questions or comments on the Board of Selectmen's presentation for Mark?
Not on the presentation, but Mark, did you touch on the stimulus money?
Right. Right now, what we're looking at and we're still trying to get clarification. Bev and I have been working with CCM, but it looks like the town's gonna receive $531,000. The school district, 204,000. And then coming in, and on the town side, we're not sure if that 531,000 includes the 204, or if that's in it separate from the 204. And then coming into Talon County is 29.2 million divided by the per capita, because that's going to be redistributed to the towns on a per capita basis, is my latest understanding. So there's 150,721 people in Talon County. So that's $193.74 per capita times, I just used 5,400 as a round number for Columbia. That brings in $1,046,000 for Columbia with no indication of how to spend it. So I enthusiastically wait to find out how I can spend $1 million.
Oh, wait a second, we can help.
On COVID reimbursement. But maybe they'll open that up to infrastructure and I can start repairing some of our bridges with it, or
Be great.
substantial roads, paving, which would be wonderful. That's the biggest part of my budget. is capital.
It seems extravagant.
I would agree.
Yeah, given how small a town we are, can you imagine what they're sending to other towns?
No,
Yeah, you can't let a crisis go to waste.
Okay, does anybody else have questions for Mark? Brian? No?
No, sorry, I was fixing my screen.
Okay. All
I
right,
mean, I agree with Dick, just as a comment.
just,
that-
yeah, too much to take in all at once.
Yeah, too much to take in all at once, and it's, a $1.2 million increase is a bit much, I think.
Agreed, and we'll see as I think the weeks develop, we'll see a lot more
Yeah.
coming.
Sure. And Mark mentioned that there's flexibility and from the town on some of the especially the capital.
Right.
Seems to be the biggest increase. So I would expect us to have some talks about that.
Well, Mark, in terms of a timeline, do we need more time or a delay so you can figure out and make a recommendation?
yeah, my problem is I don't know if we'll know anything in 1 week.
Well, that's what I mean. Do we need 2 weeks? 3?
Perhaps we can discuss that during the meeting, this next meeting time frame.
Well, I'm not sure.
You
I
can
mean,
think about
Ernie's raising a really good point. Do we meet a week from now, or do we wait until we have more information about money that's coming into the town?
Right, I know, but what I'm saying is that's part of the agenda a little bit later on, so maybe Mark can think about it while we go
Move
back to the budget stuff before we can talk about next meetings, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
review what's in front of us, but I'm sure the Board of Selectmen would like stab whatever changes they think might be appropriate.
Okay.
So
All right,
we can-
we should cover that. Any other questions on Mark's presentation? Okay.
Thank
Bev,
you,
do you
Mark.
want to? All right, thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Bev, do you want to talk about the minimum budget requirement compliance component, or do you want Maria to do that?
Well, we haven't gotten any new updates on if there's been a change in the law. I mean, we did get a minimum budget report. I think I sent it everyone when it came in over a month ago, where basically, I think they were saying, let me see, I'll look at the copy of it here. No, that was last year. Last year it was over 600,000. I think this year, it was like 200,000 that could have been cut in the 2021 budget. So again, it depends on what years they're looking at to see whether it can be cut. But I still think the law is still the minimum it has to be is the prior year budget. And then probably you can do a reduction, but again, we don't know how much that is yet.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Any questions about the MBR before we move on? Okay, I'm sure we'll get more guidance later.
No, we won't.
Bev, don't go
I
anywhere.
agree with Ernie, by the way.
Sure that wasn't meant for the minutes. Bev, before you sign off, do you want to talk about the 2021, 2022 auditors?
Yeah, so, I mean, we still have some time, but I figure let's get this done. The question is for 5-pack, do we want to stay with the current auditors, King and Associates? They do a pretty good job. They do rotate their auditors out. There's usually one that's been here numerous times, but they keep bringing in new people. They managed to keep their fees pretty much steady. Even this past audit, they thought they're going to have to charge more, but they were able to not, based on all the information that I gave them, that they didn't have to charge extra because of COVID or the new restrictions that the state all of a sudden put on, adding to the budget, especially the Board of Ed EFS report. There was a survey that came out. I think I emailed it to Ernie and Mark. We're basically in line with towns our size for the cost of the audit. There are some towns that are getting almost $10,000 to $15,000 more than we're currently paying. But we're pretty much in the middle there at the cost they're charging us. So I myself personally recommend keeping them. But again, it's 5-pack's decision whether they want to continue the relationship with King and Associates. So I just need to know if you want to motion to appoint them tonight or you want to table it to another meeting. But I know we do, if you choose not to, then we have to go out to bid. But I know before end of May or June or something, we have to let the state know who the auditors are.
I mean, I think we have time. We can ask for, if anyone is prepared to make a motion tonight regarding the auditors, we can go forward unless someone would rather make a motion to table. My inclination is to go ahead and appoint, but.
And
I
I
did-
agree with that. I think this is a
I move
relatively
that we
minor
do.
matter. So why don't I move that we appoint we do a contract with the current auditors and use them for next year.
Okay, King and Associates, any second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed to retaining King and Associates as our auditor?
I just have comments and
Sure.
maybe a question. So I did read through it. Thank you for sending it out, last year's audit. The question is, do auditors provide any more like analytical tools? Like, can we get some sort of like, all I can do is read this thing, you know, like are there audit firms that allow you to look at it graphically online or allow you to do any analysis of it? Or is that just not something that doesn't exist? Do you pretty much get like this copy and that's what you get?
That's what you get. If there's certain information you want me to provide you based on what I gave them for the audit, I can provide you some of those reports, or you can come to my office and I can show you some of the stuff. They do have
It was more of
audit
a,
papers.
and that wouldn't be necessary. It was just a question if it's available in the marketplace. You know, analytics are such a big part of reporting, and now that you would think that they would offer some places would offer software that allows you to look at different things in different ways. But if it's not out there, that's fine. I'm totally on board with keeping it the way it is.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. I mean, basically the auditors, they just review everything and make the report. But I mean, if there's something you want me to ask them for, I know they'll, because I know there'll be a charge for it, which I assume if that's what 5-pack wants, we can ask them for it. But pretty much what you see is what you get.
Right. That's not necessary. If you knew off the top of your head that there's some slick analysis software for this stuff, that would be great, but I'd be interested in at least reviewing them, but this is fine.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay. Is anyone opposed to appointing, rather than in favor? Anyone opposed? Any, do you see none? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, so next, Bev, is transfers. Do you want to do that?
We do
Two?
not have any. No transfers.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, surprise. It's not a surprise. It wasn't in your packet, right? So I didn't surprise you.
They didn't change the charter, did they?
I
Not
thought it
yet.
was a psych out.
I figure I'll give it to you next time, okay? I'll bring in about 20.
Okay, good. All right.
If I knew Kelly was gonna run the meeting, I would have made sure they were there tonight.
All right, thank you, Bev. I appreciate all that. So last item on the agenda are our next meetings, which I think goes back to Ernie's and Dick's initial question. We have one scheduled for the 24th and the 31st and the 7th and the 14th. So 4 special meetings as budget workshops. We often don't need all of them. Do we think we should defer the 24th and just have the next one on the 31st? Or do we think we can do some meaningful discussion on the 24th, even if we don't have all of the information regarding the grants that might be coming?
I guess, Mark, when do you think that we're gonna have information about money that's gonna be coming the town's way? Do you have a projection at all, as time-wise?
I know the cities and towns are just as upset. We're all upset that they're launching such a huge initiative without any direction in the middle of our budget process. So there's 2 ways we could do it. I can, keep listening every day, and then right before on next Tuesday, before we have to publish an agenda, I'd have an idea of whether I know anything new or not. So you could hold off that way. But I don't think we'll know, definitely won't know anything on insurance in 1 week. I wouldn't think. And directions, we were told they have 30 to 60 days to get the directions to us.
Great.
Okay. I guess what I'm thinking is, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to meet next week.
Absolutely not. I agree.
Oh, I'm thinking that let's
Well,
move the next meeting until the 31st.
but Dick, before we do that, can we just ask Maria if she thinks that there's something meaningful that we could accomplish next week relative to the Board of Education budget? Because they may
Sure.
need to have some input from us sooner rather than later, as Ernie suggested. So Maria, what do you think?
I think 2 weeks is fine, if that works for you. I think our next meeting would be the beginning of April. So if we had to go back to the drawing board a bit, I think the timeline would be fine. I don't
Yeah.
think that we will have, I think 2 weeks is safer for us to get some feedback on how
Okay.
our transition for insurance is going.
Okay, so that's March 31st would be our next meeting. That's before your early April one, so.
And I guess
Okay.
what I'm thinking also is, let's not make it a maybe, depending on whether or not we have information. Let's just plan on doing the 31st. And if we don't have information about money coming our way, we can begin a discussion about the Board of Selectmen budget and the Board of Education budget too, and move on from there. So it's not a maybe, it's a definite that we'll meet on the 31st.
Correct.
Okay, Ernie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. I agree with Dick.
Okay. Is there anyone who thinks we should meet on the 24th? Anyone? Okay. Then do we need to do a motion to change the dates? Bev or Mark, do you know?
I would make a motion to,
Motion to cancel. I would think we would make a motion to cancel the
Yes.
24th. Dick, is that your motion?
I move that we cancel the meeting scheduled for March 24th, and that we meet on 31st.
Okay. Jeff, was there a second?
There's a second.
Any further discussion? Anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, hearing none, motion carries unanimously. I think that's it, unless there's any further discussion about other meetings. We can take a motion to adjourn.
Great job, Kelly. Thank you.
Great, thank you, guys. All
Very
right.
smooth, very
Thanks,
smooth.
You're on next week.
Well, thank you all very much and have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Good night,
be
everybody.
safe, everybody, and we'll see you on the 31st.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
too.
See ya.
Bye.